Book 2, Telemachus assembles the people of Ithaca. The first light of dawn stretched over Ithaca, painting the sky in soft hues of gold and crimson. The island, still drowsy in the embrace of sleep, stirred to life as the sea breeze whispered through the olive groves. But within the palace of Odysseus, Telemachus had already risen, his heart steeled with a newfound resolve. The words of Athena, spoken the night before, echoed in his mind, urging him to stand against those who defiled his father's home. He took his spear and, summoning the heralds, issued a call that had not been heard in many years, a call to assembly. At his command, the townspeople gathered in the great agora, a place where once only kings and elders spoke, where Odysseus himself had stood before departing for Troy. Now his son, no longer a mere boy, stepped forward to address the people of Ithaca. As the men assembled, a hush fell over the crowd. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the stone-paved square. The suitors, arrogant and at ease, arrived last, lounging carelessly, their laughter barely restrained as they took their places. Telemachus, though aware of their mockery, did not falter. With steady hands and a voice that carried the weight of his lineage, he spoke. "People of Ithaca, hear me. For too long, our land has been plagued by injustice. My father, Odysseus, the great warrior who fought for Greece, has not returned. Whether he lives or has perished I do not know. But while he is absent, these men, these suitors, have taken his home for their own. They feast on our cattle, drink our wine, and waste my inheritance with no shame, with no fear of the gods." A murmur ran through the crowd. The common folk had long witnessed the suitors' arrogance, but none had dared to speak against them. Now, at last, the son of Odysseus demanded justice. Then, from the ranks of the suitors, Antinous rose. A man of wealth and boldness, he smirked as he stepped forward, his voice dripping with mockery. "Telemachus, you speak as if we wrong you, yet you forget the truth. Your mother, Penelope, is the cause of all this. She refuses to choose a husband, though she has had ample time. She deceived us with her weaving, promising to decide once her tapestry was finished, yet unweaving it at night. If you seek blame, cast it upon her, not us." The suitors laughed, emboldened by Antinous' words. But Telemachus, though his blood burned with anger, did not yield. "I will not force my mother to marry against her will," he declared. "But neither will I allow you to ruin my home any longer. If you have any honor, leave now and feast upon your own wealth, not mine." Silence followed. The suitors shifted uneasily, their laughter fading. But before anyone could speak, an old man stepped forward, Halitherses, a prophet known for his wisdom. His eyes, clouded by age, shone with the light of foresight as he raised his staff and spoke. "Fools! You dare mock the son of Odysseus, but you do not see the signs. I tell you, the king shall return, and those who dishonor his house shall suffer dearly. I have read the omens, the eagles that fought in the sky this morning, a sign of vengeance to come. Mark my words, Odysseus will return, and there will be no mercy for those who have wronged him." The crowd shuddered at the prophecy, but the suitors only scoffed. Eurymachus, another of their leaders, dismissed the old man's words with a wave of his hand. "Enough of these foolish tales. If Odysseus were to return, he would have done so long ago. As for Telemachus, let him do as he pleases, but we shall not leave until his mother chooses a husband." Anger smoldered in Telemachus' heart, but he knew words alone would not drive them away. He needed action. Turning to the gathered men, he made his final pronouncement. "Since no justice will come from you, I shall seek it elsewhere. I will sail to Pylos and Sparta to learn my father's fate. If he still lives, I will find him. If he is dead, I will honor him as he deserves and take my vengeance upon those who have wronged us." With that, he turned and strode away, his mind already set on his journey. The assembly ended, the people dispersing with whispers on their lips. Some feared for Telemachus, others admired his courage. The suitors, though outwardly amused, now eyed him with suspicion, sensing a shift in the winds. Back in the palace, Telemachus made preparations in secret. With the help of Euryclea, the loyal nurse who had cared for him since birth, he gathered provisions for his voyage. She, fearing for his safety, begged him not to go, but he reassured her. "Fear not, dear nurse. The gods are with me and I must go. If I am to become a man, I can no longer wait in my father's shadow." And so, as night fell over Ithaca, Athena, in the guise of mentor, walked by his side. Beneath the stars, she whispered to him words of courage, for the path ahead would not be easy. The boy who had lived in uncertainty was gone. In his place stood a young man ready to claim his destiny. Thus began Telemachus' journey, one that would lead him across the vast sea, through distant lands, and into the heart of his father's legend.